Hello, everybody. Welcome to Storytime again from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. The story we have for you today comes from Italy, and it is a legend about January 6th and the visitor that Italian children get on the night of January 6th. This particular version of the story I learned from the late author illustrator Tommy DiPiola. This is the legend of Old Befana. Once long ago, on the outskirts of a little village in Italy, lived an old woman named Befana. Everyone in town just called her Old Befana. And everyone knew her, but no one knew her very well. In fact, everyone in town thought she was rather cranky. For you see, if they went to visit, Old Befana would simply say to them, "I don't have time for visiting," and she never invited them in. She was always sweeping out her house and off of her front stoop and on her front walk all the way down to the street, 2 or 3 times a day. Sometimes you could smell lovely smells of something baking coming from Befana's house, but no one was quite sure who she baked for. She never saw anyone. And sometimes you walked past Befana's house, you could hear her singing lullabies, but there was no one to sing lullabies to. So some of the people in the town began to think that perhaps Befana might be just a little bit crazy. Well, one night, Befana finished her supper, and she swept out her kitchen, and then she got herself ready for bed, and she locked the door of her house, and she went over to the windows, and she closed the shutters so no light could get in from outside, and then she went to bed. Well, in the middle of the night, Befana was awoken by a bright light in her room. She did not understand how this could possibly be. She checked to make sure she had blown out the lamp, and the door was still closed and locked, and all of the windows were still shuttered, but it was so bright in her room. So finally, Befana started looking around the room, and she realized that the light was coming from outside. And so she went up to one of the windows, and she opened the shutters, and suddenly the room was filled as bright as day with a brilliant light from a big star in the sky. It was shining so brightly, it seemed to be growing. Befana just thought to herself, "Oh, wonderful. How am I supposed to sleep with this bright star in the sky lighting up the room as if it were daylight?" Well, she closed those shutters as tightly as she could, and she went back to bed. But it was so bright in the light of that star that Befana just tossed and turned for the rest of the night, and she wasn't really able to get back to sleep. Well, the next morning at dawn, Befana gave up on sleeping, and she got up and got herself dressed. And she had her breakfast, and then she picked up her broom. And she swept out her little house, and she swept off the front porch, and she started to sweep the sidewalk all the way down to the street. Well, as she was sweeping, she heard a sound that sounded like the tinkling of bells. She looked around. She didn't see anything, and so she decided it must just have been the wind. And she kept sweeping. Sweep, sweep, sweep. And then she heard the sound of bells again. Must just be the birds. And she kept sweeping her walk. And she swept until she heard the sound again. And this time, when she looked around, what she saw coming over the hill and down the road towards her was the most glorious procession Befana had ever seen. Donkeys and horses and camels and elephants. And there were people leading them and people riding on them. And it was colorful, and there were so many people. She'd never seen that many people in one place before, and such a glorious procession. Well, about halfway through the procession, there were 3 men riding on camels, and they were wearing beautifully embroidered robes that looked rather royal. And since the 3 men were all wearing crowns on their heads, Old Befana figured they must be some kind of kings or important people or something. Well, as the procession continued down the road, coming closer and closer, of course, Befana had forgotten about her sweeping by now. She was just watching all of this go past her house. And as the procession drew near to the 3 kings drew near to Befana, the procession stopped. And the camels knelt down, and the 3 kings got off, and they came up to Befana, and the first king said, "I beg your pardon, my lady, but we are looking for Bethlehem. How would we get there?" And Befana said, "Bethlehem. I've never heard of this place. I have no idea how you would get there." And the second king said, "We are looking for the child. Have you seen him?" "Well, there are many children," Befana said. Well, the third king said, "But this child is special. You see, we have read in our books that there will be a king born in Bethlehem. When there is a great star seen in the sky, that will be the sign that the child has been born, and we are searching for him." "Well, the star I have certainly seen. It kept me awake all night long," Befana said. "If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have work to do." And she picked up her broom and she started sweeping again. Well, the 3 kings went back and they got on their camels, and the camels stood up and the procession started to move off again. And as Befana was sweeping all of the dust of the procession off of her front walk, suddenly a young boy who was leading a camel called out to her, and he said, "Oh, grandmother, grandmother," for you see, that was how he had been taught to address older women. And he said, "Grandmother, why don't you come with us to find the baby king? You see, this is a special child. He's come to change the world. He has come for all of the poor people, just like you and I." Befana said, "I don't think so, child." She kept sweeping. But as she was sweeping, she was thinking, baby child, born for the poor, coming to the world, taking him gifts. Goodness knows, Befana is poor. Well, she finished sweeping, and she went back into her house, and she sat for a moment, and she thought, do you know, perhaps she would go find the child. But she had no gift to take. And so she thought for a moment more, and then she thought, she could bake something. And so she went over and she got out the flour and the sugar and the butter, and she started to bake. And she baked all day long. She did not even take time to sweep her house again. She just kept baking cakes and cookies and candies and all sorts of good things to eat. And then she was done. She packaged them all up and put them in a big basket with a little pot of coals to keep them warm. And then she wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and she picked up her broom, and she thought to herself, now, once I have given the cakes and goodies to the family, the child's mother will be tired. Having a baby is not easy. So she will be tired. So I will take my broom and I will sweep the room for her so she doesn't have to do it. Well, Befana opened the door to walk out. And then she looked down and she saw dirt on her front stoop from all of the people who had gone by all day long. And she realized she hadn't swept her house, not since that morning very early. And so she said, well, it won't take long. And she set the basket aside and she took her broom and she swept out her little house. and she swept her front step, and she swept the front walk all the way down to the road. And then she went back up to the house, and she put on her shawl, and she picked up her basket and her broom. She locked the door, and she began to walk down the road. But then she realized it was going to take her quite a while to catch up if she was just walking. And so she began to run. And she ran, and she ran, and she ran. Faster and faster, and then as she ran more and more, slower and slower and slower, until finally she had to stop running because she was out of breath and she was tired. And she sat down beside the road and she realized that she should have started out sooner. I will never find the child now. I don't even know where to look. And I'm never going to catch up with those kings. They left this morning and they were on camels. And I'm leaving at night and it's dark, but there is the bright star. It is still in the sky, so I know the child has come, but I don't know how to find him. Well, just as she was thinking all of these despairing thoughts, suddenly the sky was filled with brilliant beings. They looked like people, but not quite like people. They had wings and they were shining and they were singing. They were singing such songs Befana had never heard such beauty before in her entire life. And the angels began to sing and they were singing about glory to God in the highest. And the child has been born that is going to save the world. And Befana got up. And she picked up her basket and her broom, and she began running, trying to catch the angels as they were flying across the sky away from her, running after them. She was running and running, and she was calling out, wait, where is the child? I want to see the child. Wait, please wait, tell me where he is. And she kept on running faster and faster and faster, until Befana was running faster than she had ever run in her entire life, even when she was very little. And she ran, and she ran, and she ran, and instead of feeling like a heavy old woman running along on the ground, Befana realized she was feeling quite light and airy, and she wasn't really feeling all that tired either. And she wasn't really sure what was happening, but she looked down at the ground and realized she was not running on the ground anymore. Oh no! Befana was running in the sky. She was flying. It was a night of miracles. Alas, Old Befana's story does not have the totally happy ending that we should all wish for she never did find the child in Bethlehem. But every year on the Feast of the Three Kings, January 6th, Old Befana goes up and down Italy, leaving gifts, candies, and cookies and toys in the houses of all of the little children in Italy. And when she is done leaving them their gifts, she sweeps the floor quite clean. For, she says, you never know when you may find the child king. And that is the legend of Old Befana from Italy. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come back and join us again on Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time. We will have another story for you here from the Milledgeville Public Library of Illinois. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.